Let's see. So, point number 9 of 12 is that there's over 100 Greens, at least, in office right now. And at least 1,300 have been elected since the party was first founded. Well, actually, I'm not sure what year that is because, as we talked about, there's kind of a few different founding years. But let's say in the past like 30 years, right? Something like that. Um, so there's a nice little graphic there that kind of explains it that we've had over 1,300 folks elected to office. Now, most of these have been local office, but as we mentioned with Gail McLaughlin and who was the guy? I'm sorry, I forgot. But as we mentioned earlier, there were Greens that from local offices were really able to create change. So I kind of want to emphasize that again, that it's not just about winning Congress. It's not even about winning state legislatures. That sometimes being on city council or school board can make a huge difference for your community. And Greens, over 1,300 of them have won these types of offices and have changed their communities, have had an impact on their community. So that's a starting point, and obviously we would like to run way more candidates than this, and we need to run way more candidates than this to create an eco-socialist movement. There's literally tens of thousands of local offices around the country, so we really have to expand the movement. But of course, you also have to start somewhere. So
there's approximately 500,000 elected offices in the United States.
Yeah, right. So it needs to be a lot more than just this. But that means that we need more folks joining their local parties, recruiting candidates for office, potentially running for office themselves. Green candidates don't fall out of trees or out of the sky or anything like that. They're everyday people like you, or me, or Chris, or someone deciding that they want to run for school board, or their local city council, or their local water conservation district board, or there's lots of different offices that vary depending on the state. So it's up to you and everybody to decide whether or not it's appropriate for you or to support some other candidate. But in any case, Greens often do win at local levels when we run. That's the key point that I want to make here. That when Green candidates run, there's a very high success rate, and the issue is not that Greens can't win. The issue is more that we need to recruit a lot more people, and that happens as we get more people involved in the party. As you join, as you pay dues and contribute funds, as you help recruit candidates, you help with a campaign. All of these aspects.
There's a couple questions that I'll get to in a minute that are applicable to this, but one thing I want to raise is the idea of registrations, and the I think there's only about 30 states that even allow registration, right? So the United States has set up a political system, actually 50 plus small political system, right? Not one unified. So what it means to be a Green can be different places. I've been attacked for not being a quote unquote registered Green, but it's impossible in my state. There is no partisan registration. But when it comes down to it, when we're talking about these local races, a lot of them are nonpartisan races, which means that we are not able to be held to a different standard than the Republicans and the Democrats. They also often have much more achievable, signature requirements to get on the ballot, much more achievable, constituencies when it comes to knocking doors, things like that. So these local races are really a real opening for us, right? If I wanted to run for Congress in my district, in a normal year, the Republicans have to collect about 750 signatures. The Democrats have to collect 750 signatures. And as a Green or a Libertarian or an Independent in Illinois, in my district, I'd have to collect over 15,000 signatures in 90 days. And I have to double them because they're going to challenge signatures and try to get me kicked off the ballot. So in reality, I have to collect over 30,000 signatures in 90 days from a largely rural district. I can't do it, right? I literally can't run for Congress. I've been priced out when it comes to actually collecting the signatures. On the other hand, if I were to run for city council in my town, I have to collect the same number of signatures as anyone else, right? Because it's a nonpartisan race, and they can't repress me. They can't have that targeted repression that we face so many places. So I think, Greens are too often getting sucked into these larger races, and in some ways, I get it, right? I will personally say in terms of my policy acumen, I'm much more, comfortable talking on the federal level than I am on local, right? It's just where I've spent a lot of my time. But those local, but at the same time, I just talked about the signature barrier, and then trying to run in my district will literally be in textbooks how badly the Democrats gerrymandered it in 2022. It runs hundreds of miles. It's probably only 100 miles long, and it runs from St. Louis in southwestern Illinois at a 45-degree angle up through the state, just catching the cities that they wanted to catch, right? But as a Green who doesn't take corporate money, right, I'm going to have to cover hundreds and hundreds of miles to campaign in my district, right? Whereas it's much more accessible at the lower level. Brewers Pilots asks, what are the benefits of registering Green compared to you being a registered independent? It depends, right? In Illinois, it means nothing because you can't register as anything. We have semi-closed primaries where you walk up and you say, I want a Republican ballot or I want a Democratic ballot. You can just pick one, but we don't register. In a state like Colorado or California, it can mean the world, right? Because whether or not they are recognized as a political party by the state is determined by their registration numbers, right? So in a state like Colorado, if you get 1,000 registered Greens, you're now an official party, and all that ballot access repression that I was talking about is gone. Right. So if you're in Colorado, it's really important. In Delaware, right? I mentioned them because they're a state that also has that threshold where the Green Party kind of seems to just constantly be like right around the line. Are we there? Are we not there? And so if you're in Delaware, your one registration could be the difference between a recognized political party and not. But then, as I said, there's 20 other states where you can't even register. So there is that. The other side is when you register Green, you let them know that there's support, right? It's a clear statement of where you stand, as opposed to being a registered independent. In some states where, depending on how their electoral system works, it may make sense to run, to register independent. But and you'll also often see Greens sometimes running as independents. A big name that I can think of was Lisa Savage in 2022 or in 2020, ran for U.S. Senate out of Maine, and she actually ran as an independent, not because she wasn't a Green, but because it was half the amount of signatures to run as an independent. So that guided that decision, which one was easier to get on the ballot. Do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think the registrations, like Chris said, registrations matter in some states and make a difference whether or not you're recognized as a political party, or like in Pennsylvania, that actually makes a difference between whether recognized as a minor political party or a major political party, which is again another legal status thing. We're not allowed to participate in the government-run primaries as a minor party, but as a major party we would, for example. So it depends a lot on your state, exactly how much that matters. I think what's more important than the registration is to become a member of your Green Party, whatever that means, whether it's registering or just being a dues-paying member or whatever it is, like Chris's case in Illinois. Because the important thing about joining the Green Party, as opposed to being an independent that just supports the Green Party from afar, is that whenever there's an independent campaign, all of that infrastructure work will just evaporate after the campaign. Part of the point of the Green Party is that when we're running campaigns, we're doing this activism and all, it should all feed into a common infrastructure that we hold in the Green Party so that the Green Party gets stronger. It grows with every campaign instead of having to build a independent campaign from scratch for 1 year, and then it disappears, and then you have to start over again the next year, right? If all of this is happening within the Green Party, then all of that building work can stay in the Green Party as preparation for the next election or whatever comes up. So I think your question kind of highlights that point, that to build a movement, you have to actually be part of the movement. You have to actually be a member and join and build that infrastructure together with other people in your group. And you don't really get that as an independent.
Yeah, and I want to double down on one of the things that Garrett said, which was, registering is one thing, but we live in a political culture that membership in a party doesn't matter, right? It doesn't convey with it any power or any voice. It's just a legal designation. What's really important is getting involved, right? Is joining the actual party itself, which can mean different things, different places, right? The state of California has over 100,000 registered Greens, but that doesn't mean that the California Green Party can turn out 100,000 people, right? There's a discrepancy between those that are on paper members and those that are actual active members. So that's a big thing. That's really what we should prioritize. And if we were a membership-based party like we are in Illinois, is what we prioritize, right? Who is actually a active member who pays dues in our case. So that I think that's kind of the more important side of the idea of registration is what not just registering, but actually becoming a member and becoming involved and becoming active. Another question we had on this thread was, does the Green Party actively recruit people to run for election in local elections? I'm in Georgia, and I've never seen a Green Party member run for my state General Assembly. So first off, I'll deal with the elephant in the room, and that is that the Georgia Green Party has been expelled from the Green Party of the United States. This happened following the 2020 election, and it was done because the leadership of the Georgia Green Party basically adopted transphobic platform points, and they were found in violation of the Green Party's key values and were expelled. The member, we didn't really get into this yet, but the membership of the Green Party of the United States isn't me and you, it's state parties and caucuses. So they were removed as a member party, so we don't actually have an active Green Party in Georgia at the moment. We're trying to rebuild it, but we had a little fire that had to be thrown out. On the other side of that, long term, when it comes to Georgia, a person that meant a lot to me, and I'm really disappointed that I only started getting close to him at the end of his life. But the former chair of the Georgia Green Party was an organizer named Bruce Dixon. You may know him as the managing editor for the Black Agenda Report, but he put a lot of work into trying to grow the Georgia Green Party. And while I've talked about, the numbers in Illinois being absurd, Georgia might be the worst state in the country when it comes to repressing third parties. We're talking over 100,000 signatures to get your governor or presidential candidate on the ballot. And I should mention why we're talking about governor and presidential so much. One, they're like statewide issues, statewide campaigns. But two, I believe over half the states determine ballot access based on those results, right? In Illinois, the only way that we can get recognized as a political party is by getting over 5% in a gubernatorial or a presidential election. That's the only route we have. So we have to run in those races, right? And we have to deal with, in Illinois, it's Republicans and Democrats turn in 3,000 signatures, Greens turn in 25. In Georgia, I'm off the top of my head, and I may be wrong, but I think it's about 80,000 doubled to 160, and it's just as bad for state house and for Congress. So why you don't see a Green Party of Georgia right now is because we booted their asses. Why you haven't seen them historically is because they face a huge amount of repression, and it's extraordinarily hard to even get on the ballot in that state. So,